Finally, they're doing a video on me and my trusty longsword. I hope you guys are going to be impressed with the skill and prowess I'm about to demonstrate.
Hey, you Warden! Yo, Warden! Hey! Yeah, you Warden! Pay attention! There's a battle going on! Fool!
Play more with my Claymore. Play more with my Claymore.
Done, my glass!
Yeah. Nope.
So, I just finished watching some Star Wars prequel memes, so as a greeting today, I'm just gonna go, hello there. Okay, so I'm Zakog, and I'm going to be doing my second video on a weapon in the Dark Souls, or Souls series in general. It's not going to be a guess your weapon anymore, because I don't feel like doing two parts for these videos, so I'm just going to keep it in one. So, last time I did the Bastard Sword, and this time I'm doing the legendary Claymore. So, what's really cool about this sword is that it's generally used for thrusting type moves, so I go over the different thrusts that this weapon performs, as well as I try to recreate them in a more realistic setting. So, yeah, let's get right on into the video. As a disclaimer, since I'm only going over a few of the moves that this weapon possesses in Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3, if you want to see the entire move set minus the specifics for this weapon, you can go check out my part 1 for the Bastard Sword, where I go over the entire moveset for that weapon, and basically like a large percentage of the moves are shared between these two weapons, so I mean, you can watch that video and then come back here if you want majority of the moveset found in that video. Claymores, in a historical sense, are pretty interesting weapons. They vary a lot in size and can usually range between the size of a longsword to that of the much bigger greatswords. And mine in particular, it is smack dab in the middle between my practice longsword and my Zweihander. So for me, most of the ways I demonstrate the techniques, it will be used in both a longsword and a greatsword context. But it's pretty interesting just thinking that while we call this a claymore, essentially this was honestly the Scottish variation of different weapons. And on a later video, I'm going to be talking about the Zweihander, and believe it or not, the Dark Souls variation of this weapon bears more similarities to the Spanish greatsword Montante than the actual Zweihanders. Anyway, back to the claymore. So, while you don't see half-swording techniques used in the Dark Souls verse in the game For Honor and Medieval 2 Total War Kingdoms, you can see the claymore being used in half-swording techniques, which I really do like to see. Now, with that out the way, let's look at some of the corrections I do to these moves. So here I'm demonstrating different slashes from a horizontal, diagonal, and vertical angle. The big important thing when looking at this is that I start these strikes from a rear guard versus starting from the roof or ox like I did in the other video. But you can still do it from those stances as well if you wanted to. The first thrusting move we're going to look at is the Dark Souls 1 and 3 rolling attack R1. So this move is infamous for making this weapon so dangerous in the PvP scene for that game. And honestly, the reason why it's probably so useful is because it's a pretty practical and pretty realistic technique you'd use. The only thing I would really do is, instead of like ducking really low when you're committing to the stab, I would probably just stay a bit more upright. But overall, the technique is still good. I mean, you can do the lunge really far if you want to, and that basically makes it much more of a fencing technique, but I mean, it's still usable in either form, which is something that I guess is pretty good for that. From a technical standpoint, both the modified and the original versions of this move are simple thrust from the ox guard position. On the R2 thrust for this weapon, for all games for that matter, honestly I would just remove any of the unnecessary spins. I would use this weapon with two hands instead of with one, and I basically would just end in a guard after the follow-up swing that I do. But they basically all function the same overall. The initial thrust starts off here in the plow guard stance, and then the follow-up strike can be a horizontal, vertical, or diagonal strike from any angle that you choose. Last but not least, we have the weapon art moves for this weapon. The first one, the weapon art stance to light attack, it starts off pretty good in the aux stance, which is pretty cool, but the move itself, instead of doing this big wind up unnecessary swing that leaves you wide open after you finish, I would instead use the beginning part of the move to clear the opponent's weapon if they were going for the thrust, and then swing around to come for either a body strike or a strike to the arms. So for the weapon art to strong attack move, instead of rushing your body before taking an upwards thrust, instead it would just be much more efficient to lead with the thrust from aux and then follow suit with your body. So make sure your weapon is the leading danger factor instead of just putting your body in a position where you're going to get countered pretty easily. The end of the video here is just me demonstrating thrust from the plow guard stance, as well as I do different combinations of strikes and thrusts. So this is the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and turn on notifications. Okay, see you guys next time.